First of all, welcome this evening to our 2018 Fall Sports Activities meeting. I greatly appreciate the attendance. We've obviously done something new this year where we're making this meeting very, very important. It's a mandatory meeting as much as possible, as most of you have identified. Either you have an option, either you can come to this meeting, you make sure that you sign in, and I know several of you haven't signed in. We're going to solve that problem real quick. When you go to your breakout session, we'll have a computer for you, and when you're at your breakout session, you can make sure that you sign in. By signing in, you've verified that you've been at the meeting. Those that unfortunately did not make it to the meeting, this will be posted on YouTube, and then at the end there'll be a link and there'll be an acknowledgement quiz that they've watched and reviewed through the presentation to make sure that they've accepted their son or daughter to be a part of our activities. So with that, I'm going to try to make an effort to catch up my time. It's 6:08. I wanted to be done in 30 minutes, so I'm going to boogie through this. If you have questions, make sure you ask me afterwards. To go ahead and get started, just some quick introductions. First of all, as most of you, as you were coming in, you know our building principal, Mrs. Fletcher. I want to make sure and give her recognition. She's been very, very supportive in our new roles for athletics and activities. Mr. Hollingshead is our curriculum instructor here at the high school. Mr. Heiser takes care of our attendance and discipline. And then obviously, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Mr. Jasmine. I'm the Activities Athletic Director. If I could, at this time, I'm going to introduce each of our fall activities and sports. If I could just have the coaches stand up, and then at the end, if we could please give them a round of applause for what they're going to do for your son and daughter, I greatly appreciate it. Mr. Redmond, Mrs. Duchamp, Mr. DeCray, Mrs. Doak, Mr. Hastings, Mr. DeFa, Mr. Legursky, Mr. Anderson, and Mrs. Fire. You would all please stand up. As we all know, the countless hours that they put into helping the programs, and more importantly for your son and daughter, it's important to make sure and give them recognition. The other two that I want to make sure and mention is Mrs. McGovern and Mrs. Bolton. Each year I come up with new ideas and I bounce things off their minds, and they give me a yay or nay, hey, that's not a good idea, and their support is greatly appreciated, so I've got to give them some recognition. When you see them, thank them, please. Others, obviously without anything, you've got to have a fantastic secretary, and I have to be perfectly honest with you, I've got the best. She is organized to the 10th degree. She does a fantastic job. Whenever you see her, she's also our cheer sponsor, Mrs. Duchamp. She's done a wonderful job. So. Perhaps one of the most important things is obviously the safety of our student athletes and our sponsor activity students. Mrs. Wiseman's our athletic director. She'll be in the library today. When you see her or you see her around, make sure you thank her. I want to make sure and thank our teachers, our transportation staff, absolutely the last minute changes that we have. I need to thank them. Our maintenance, Mrs. Bevelune, she's in here in the building too. When you see her, thank her and her crew for what they do. 2 days ago, this building was quite a mess, and they've done a fantastic job to get prepared for this meeting. Parents, I want to thank you. Thank you for giving your son or daughter the opportunity to be a part of athletics and activities at Rock Springs High School. It's a great extension of their learning, of their growth as an adult. And so I want to make sure and thank you for allowing that opportunity to happen. And then most importantly, our coaches' wives and husbands. We all know that they don't get to see them very often, and they put up with a lot, whether it be the stress of the day or whatever the case may be, or, hey, I'm home, but I'm leaving, kind of thing. So thank you, wives and husbands, for allowing Rock Springs High School to have an opportunity to coach for us. Just a little bit about our philosophy. Basically, it's just a multi-sport, multi-activity belief. We want our student athletes to be involved in as many activities and many sports as possible. The research, it's beneficial. It's research-based. It allows for great things such as discipline, teamwork, responsibility, accountability, learning different circumstances and different positions. How are they coached in this particular activity or sport as opposed to this one? It allows them to grow and become themselves and their own person. So we really, really believe in that belief. Just a part of that, how important is it? How many people do it? This is pretty, 2018 draft, 29 of the 32 first-round draft picks in the NFL were multi-sport athletes. So if, as a student athlete, you're interested in going to the next level, very few of them ever really excel when they're only involved in one sport. Be involved. Please go out. And then over here it shows another multi-sport. It shows their percentage breakdown. Multi-sport, 69% of them do track and field. It's a great sport from that standpoint. Research on sports specialization. This is just a real quick article in 2015 or 16 that talks about basically how being involved in one particular sport can actually increase lower body injuries considerably. And that's just in one particular sport. I think the biggest one that this happens to identify with happens to be in soccer. A lot of individualism in soccer, and it's been increased injuries in that regard. So just some research on that. Another major component that we really try to push with our coaches and within our programs from an athletic standpoint is strength training. It seems to be still a message out there that, well, I don't know if my son or daughter can participate at a particular age, they may be too young. This research over here shows that there can be as young as 6 to 9 years old. It shows kind of the stages of what this is. It's fundamentals, so basically it's a lot of body movement, and then it progresses into, and this is what's really important, this is the part that I want you to understand. We're talking females and males 12 to 18 years old. We're learning to train to train. Over here, then you're training to compete. Then after that, you're actually training to win. And I think that that's really important, and I want you to understand the stage at where your son or daughter is. Training to train. There's a developmental, and it's research-based, chronologically developed by their age as to where they sit. So kind of understand that. We want them to be active. They need to be active in strength training at a very young age. It's progressive, and our coaches do a wonderful job of working with that. But get them in that weight room. It's very, very important. So roles of those that are involved. Obviously, we've got a role for our coaches, for our parents, and then as ourselves for administrators. With regard to this philosophy, it's really a big belief that our coaches buy in. That's a big part of it. I can tell you that as one big component of any kind of hire, do you believe in the multi-sport model? I do not. You're probably going to go a different direction then. Okay? So that's really one of our big beliefs with our coaches. We've got to make sure that they're in support of that. For our parents, understand how that they can support their child and give them the growth through a proper chain of command so that they can develop effectively. And then obviously for administrators, we want to be a huge support piece to this. How can we support the programs so that we can keep students involved, have a good experience, and also be able to learn lessons? So in summary, again, it's just being involved in as many extracurricular and multi-sport opportunities so that they can grow. Let our students develop character, coach to coach, coaches to coach, and parents to support their child through their activity. Obviously, there are risks involved in activities as well as with athletics. There are risks, and it's very important that we make sure that we detail those and bring that information up. The biggest thing that I want to talk about is that you have got to teach, or you've got to make sure that your son or daughter communicates with our athletic trainer about an injury, okay? It's very, very important that they need to understand. We need that information. It's pretty simple for us to identify that if a student is injured or are they hurt, there's a considerable difference there. If they're hurt, we can rehab them and continue to play. But if they're injured and they keep playing through that, it's only going to get worse. Then all of a sudden now it's prolonged everything. And in this day and age, there are some great rehab and rehabilitative services that we can really take care of. So please make sure that your son or daughter communicates with their coach and then communicates with the athletic trainer in regard to injury. So talking about that, we have a concussion protocol that's put in place. Just kind of reading over here, it says concussions must follow up with an appropriate licensed health care provider and then our athletic trainer. We actually have a process. So if there's a particular injury that happens in an event and our athletic trainer has identified as a suspicion or a concussion, they will be removed from play no matter what. At that point, then they need to be assessed by a healthcare provider. You're more than welcome to get that information from our trainer. You go ahead and you communicate with your doctor. Once your doctor has given that full release, then what we do is we have a return to play protocol. So even though your doctor says that you've been fully released to go ahead and participate, to be structured in a very, very safe manner, we're going to go a return to play, which is basically a 6-day return to play protocol. Whether it be in football, whether it be in another activity, there's a process that we want to make sure that they're 100%. Some of those concussions actually have a very big cognitive component to it, and it can actually limit some of their schoolwork. So again, we want to make sure that that's a very, very thorough process that goes through. So again, understand that you may receive a notice from your doctor that says that you have been released to go ahead and participate in full activities. We're going to return to play. We're going to have a slow progression. It may be one day biking. Next big day, they can actually practice with no pads. Then they're going to start with pads. Then they can actually hit. Then they can go ahead and go into a full scrimmage. And then they can go ahead and be hopefully able to play. So just want to make sure to kind of explain that a little bit. For those of you that are in athletics, we have everything online. So your athletic handbook that you may have received over there, you don't necessarily need that hard copy unless you want a hard copy, but everything is online. If you make sure that you go to www.swol123.net, this is where all of our paperwork is set up. It has everything on there except for the sports physical. That will be the one thing that you will need to make sure that you hand in to our athletic trainer. So, to kind of give you an understanding behind the process, first of all, your physical has to be dated after May 1st or to be an eligible physical, okay? What you'll do is you can go on the site, you go ahead and you fill out all of this paperwork. It's pretty easy, it's very simple once when you get on. You hand in your physical to our trainer. She'll review to make sure that you have all of your paperwork handed in. Once when your paperwork is all handed in, then she will go ahead and issue you an orange card. Then your son or daughter will go ahead and take that card, give it to their coach. That lets the coach know that we've received all the important information that we need for your son or daughter to be able to participate. They will not until that orange card is handed in, okay? So make sure that you get on that. There was a lot of information that was given through social media about how to do that. There's just a quick pin that you go ahead and associate with that. So you put in your email, it'll ask for that pin, you put in that pin, then it'll send you a notification. And it also sends it to our trainer. Our trainer verifies it, you come back, you can enter in your own password, and now you've got access with it. The nice thing about it is after the first year, once when you've done it for those freshmen, then the next year, all you have to do is go in and update it. You don't have to open up another account, and it makes it go real smooth. So today, just so you know, Mrs. Wiseman, she'll be in the library afterwards to help with your paperwork. We've got multiple computers that are down there that are set up so that you can access those, especially for those of you that have never done it. She'll be able to help you. Also, my activity secretary and Mrs. Fletcher will be down there to help. If there's those that have done that before, you're more than welcome to do that at home. You don't have to stick around, and then you can go ahead and get that taken care of. Also notice that she will be available 3 to 5 p.m. on the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd. So obviously tomorrow, the next day, and the 3rd of August, she'll be in the athletic training room. For those of you that don't know where that's at, that's clear down by the football field in that long hallway down there in between the 2 locker rooms. That's where you can get your paperwork taken care of. So with that, it just talks a little bit about our sports physicals, Hunter Family Medical Clinic. Call it any time, set it up, they can get you an appointment, get your physical taken care of. With the hospital, they've got it set up for the 1st and the 2nd of August from 2 to 4. You can go, it's at 3000 College Drive. Go in there, you can get your physical. The nice thing about it is that these two entities have been able to set it up for 25 bucks. Whereas in the past, remember, it'd be $70 if you went inside your ordinary doctor. So it's a great opportunity for you. Please get those physicals taken care of. Handbook. There have been some changes to the activity handbook, and so when you receive that online, please look through that. There's been some attendance changes, there's been some social media guidelines that have been established, and there's been some clarity established within your participation and your activity participation throughout your high school career. So I want to make sure that we kind of go through those. First of all, attendance on practice. You have to be in at least half of your classes. Okay, if you've got 7 classes, you need to be in at least 4 of them. All right, if you've got 6 classes, you need to be in at least 4 of them. Don't borderline with just the 3. Attendance on game day. Students must be in all their classes on the day of a competition. Okay, and I'm going to get some clarity to this a little bit. The day of a competition, if you leave at 10 o'clock, you need to make sure that you're in all your classes up to the time that you need to depart. Just because you leave that day, you're like, well, I'm leaving at 10, we're not going to be in half of our classes, I don't need to be there. You show up late, which means more than 5 minutes to a class, you are considered absent and you will not go. You have to be in all your classes on the day of a competition. With that, if you're leaving before classes start, so say for instance, you're leaving for a competition that's at 7:30 on a Friday. You're like, well cool, I don't have to be in my classes. You need to be in all your classes the day before. So that Thursday, you need to be in every single one of your classes to be eligible to go ahead and participate in that activity. So I want to make sure that you get that clarity in that and understand you are student athletes, student activity sponsorships or students. You've got to be in your classes first. That's our number one thing. Absences can only be approved by me, so if you have a doctor's appointment, I'm not asking you to go ahead and change your doctor's appointment because you have that competition, but I need prior notice. You know that it's been set up for some time, you know, dentist appointments are every 6 months. Make sure you let me know. Give me advance notice, at least 3 or 4 days in notice. You go ahead and you let me know. Then we can go ahead and make sure that we go through it. The way that's typically set up, let's say for instance again it's at 10 o'clock, you go to your classes until 9:30, you make sure that you check out. Let me say that again, you make sure that you check out. Then you go to your appointment. Then as soon as you're done with your appointment, you make sure you come back, you check in, and then you go to the rest of your classes. You will be okay to go ahead and compete, okay? So make sure that you kind of understand. We don't want to make that too hard. But again, you must get pre-approval and you must check out and check back in, okay? That way we know that that's the time that you ended up leaving. Other things that kind of apply with that, make sure that if you're job shadowing, if some of you that are juniors or seniors, even some sophomores that may be job shadowing, you need to make sure that you check out and check in. And make sure that you talk to your teacher about that being taken care of so that we've got that effective communication. There may be additional rules that are set up by your coaches regarding practices. Priority, you're allowed 8 semesters. So say for instance you go out for football your freshman year, and then you say I'm not going to go out my sophomore year, but I'm going to go out my junior year, I'm going to go out my senior year, and then I'm going to go out my super senior year. Not going to happen. Okay, you get 8 semesters from the start. All right? You've got to be an amateur athlete, so if you happen to be competing in a competitive AAU league, and that's a big part of it, you're going to have to choose. Either you stay with that, or you stay with high school athletics, but you have to be an amateur athlete. Cannot be a part of an independent team. This is a really kind of a borderline situation. So if you happen to be out for a particular sport, let's say fall, you're out for football, but you're also competing on an Avenger soccer team. Now you've identified yourself as an independent team, you have violated this rule, and it doesn't penalize the team, but penalizes you. You're ineligible for the entire year. So make sure that you understand that when you're participating in something, you're a part of that. There is a little bit of a difference with this in regard to athletics and activities, okay? You can be involved in an athletic event or sport, and you can be involved in an activity, which is kind of unique. So for instance, you can be in football and you can be in speech and debate, because they're 2 different things there. Obviously, recruitment's not allowed. This definitely applies for schools that have 2 high schools. It's really a big issue with Kelly Walsh and Natrona. Obviously, some of you probably know about that. If you've gone to another high school and you're coming here for the first time, please come and see me. We need to make sure we check your eligibility status. And you got the proper transfer rule. If your parents live in Casper, now you're moving here with your uncle, and you've done this twice before, you're going to be ineligible. You're not going to be able to participate in varsity athletics. Maybe at the sub-varsity, but we'll want to make sure that we talk about that. And then obviously no participation in a college or university. Pretty self-evident there. Requirements for participation, you have to have insurance. Now there's some insurance forms that my activity secretary has, Mrs. Duchamp. Please make sure if you do not have insurance, you need to get that form. It's at a reduced rate. It's catastrophic insurance. It's applicable for all your activities. And it's, I think it's like a $7 entry fee and then $100 for the insurance. So it's pretty cheap and it's good for the year. If you are homeschooled, you need to make sure that you see me so that we can get that effectively put on that list, and we can make sure that we get it reported to the Wyoming High School Activities Association, and that you're applicable to be able to do that. Cannot be 20 before August 1st, obviously you'd be ineligible at that time, and then we'll talk more about our grades, but you have to have passed 3 credits from the previous semester, and then we'll also talk about weekly eligibility here in just a little bit. Student code of conduct. Obviously, there's a student code of conduct within the school, and there's also a student code of conduct that's involved with our athletics. You need to make sure that you understand that violation of those could cause particular consequences. Probation, suspension, dismissal, eligibility can apply to those situations as well. If your first violation, whatever it be, drug, alcohol, tobacco, whatever the case is, it's 60 activity days. So from that point, 60 days. I encourage, and for lack of a better term, I'm just going to use this, if you have violated that, I encourage you to, for lack of a better term, fall on your sword and let us know right away, because then we can serve that suspension immediately. We have had situations in the past where some of them have said, you know what, I'm going to wait on the thing, and then all of a sudden we find out about it, and then we look at the 60 days and we say, guess what, now you're not eligible for regionals or state. So something to keep in mind with that. Second violation is a full calendar year. You're done for all activities for a full school calendar year. Third violation, you cannot participate in athletics for the remainder of your high school career. This piece right here kind of ties into some of the new changes that we've had within our electronic policy, but understand that electronic footage of any type can warrant a violation of school code of conduct. So if you happen to be at a particular gathering and in the background you're holding a beer can, and we received notice of that, you've just violated the drug and alcohol tobacco policy, particularly the alcohol one, you're going to be serving a suspension. Okay? Social media. We have identified that there's been some changes with social media in the last few years. How much of an impact does it play on? In this particular situation right here, this came out of an athletic administrator's article on January 9, 2015, and this was on a Twitter account. So basically what ended up happening is there were some college coaches that were highly interested in this particular student. Not only do they watch you on the field or on the court, but they watch you off of it. And so out of just curiosity, the coach went ahead and pulled up his Twitter account. Not anything that was too terrible. Interestingly though, he ended up pulling up some information from his mom's account, and they went to the young individual and said, what you represent in this particular situation, in those circumstances, we are not going to recruit you anymore. So they do look at that. And I want you to understand that that plays a big factor into it, which kind of ties into our next piece on our social media, which communicates about how we want to make sure that you're staying as positive as you possibly can. If there's any evidence that can be disparaging to a program, a coach, a player, even to another parent in that regard, eligibility can become an issue with regard to your son or daughter. It is in the activity and athletic handbook. I encourage you to read it word for word. It's very, very important. I want you to understand that those components can directly affect an entire program. So as we go through this, you'll notice pause before you post. Very, very important thing. We do have a mitigation process, okay? At the high school, we have what we call a student assistance program. So if you happen to have violated the student code of conduct, in particularly the drug, alcohol, tobacco policy, we have a mitigation program. Basically what that is that you will go ahead and take a class or classes, typically it's 4 classes, 2 hours at a time, and you get an education on the ill effects of that particular drug. When you have successfully completed that, we will mitigate your suspension. Okay, now I want to make sure that I reiterate successfully completed it. You'll notice that if it's your first violation, it goes from 60 activity days down to 10 activity days, or the maximum of 2 competitions. Okay? From 60, or from a year, it'll go down to 60 activity day suspension. And then obviously from no activities at all to 1 full calendar year suspension. If you received a 4th and you decide to mitigate, you're done with athletics, right, the high school career. So there is a process. We understand that, you know, in this particular arena, at this particular level, it's an educational process. We want them to learn from that, but at the same standpoint, there's consequences. Eligibility, a big one. This is kind of a continual question at times. This is a very important one. You're lucky you're here. You don't have to take the quiz because it's a big one. Very, very simple process as to how we have this set up. There is a weekly and a semesterly eligibility that we have. In this particular situation, you will have eligibility will be checked at the beginning of the school week. So for instance, let's just go to Labor Day weekend. We don't have school on Monday. Well, the beginning of the week would be Tuesday. On that Tuesday, we will pull an eligibility report for all athletics and all activities, okay? Same process, you must be passing 3 credits or 6 of your 7 classes. If you are not, at that particular time, you're ineligible to compete for that week, okay? We do give a 24-hour period, so basically, or actually I should say until noon the following day. I will instantly go ahead and identify those students. I'll pull them in. I'll say, guess what? You know, little Kevin, you're ineligible for this week. It shows that you're failing the first hour and you're failing the 5th period. Oh yeah, well I handed in a bunch of work, so that should be taken care of. Okay, well, you've got until tomorrow at noon to make sure that that's updated. If it's not, you're ineligible for the week. We do this for 2 reasons. First of all, to hold the student accountable to their grades, which is most important. And second of all, to make sure that it's fair for our coaches to effectively plan and prepare that week's competition. It would be very terrible to all of a sudden identify with a coach, hey, it's Thursday afternoon, I know, but that kid's ineligible. But I've had practice all week. Sorry. So we want to make that fair for both people. Students taking college classes. This is a big one. You will now have to verify your weekly college grade. So if you're taking college classes, you're taking English 1010 up at college every week, give me your report. Let me see it, whether you're failing or not. I need that. If you don't have that, not having the information identifies that you could be ineligible. So please, make sure you communicate with your professors and we get that information, okay? We have some of them in the past that has not been taken care of very well. We're going to fix that. Extenuating circumstances. Only when makeup work has been handed in prior to eligibility check. So I want to make sure and kind of clarify this. A lack of effort on your part as a student does not require extra work on our teachers. So all of a sudden Monday you come in, hey, Mr. Jasmine, here are 6 of my assignments. I need them graded by tomorrow at noon. And I've got a stack of papers over here that I need to grade. I'm going to go ahead and put them in the list, and if I get to them, I get to them. If not, it is what it is. Now, if you've proactively been working with your teacher and you've handed in work last week and it hasn't been graded, then we can work with you. But if you just all of a sudden come in and say, hey, you know, I did these 6 assignments, I need them done by tomorrow at noon so I can be eligible, just the best way to put it is a lack of effort on your part does not require extra work on our teachers. Okay? I will make the final determination on any of those, and the most important piece that I want you to understand is the student aids or seminary. Those classes do not count towards your original 7 classes. So if you're taking 6 classes and seminary, seminary does not count. So if you're failing 1 class, you are now ineligible because you don't have that 3.0 credits. Okay? So be very, very cautious. If you have seminary or student aid, stay on top of your grades. Practice requirements, I'll kind of go through this pretty quick. Golf, tennis, football, first practice August 6th, just around the corner. Golf, 2 practices, first competition August 8th. Okay, coaches will communicate with you more. Tennis must have 5 practices, first competition can be August 11th. And then football must have 9 practices. They've obviously got an extension, their first competition is actually August 24th. They have a lot of different requirements. Cross country, girls swimming, and volleyball, you must have 9 practices, starts August 25th, and each day can only count as 1 practice. So if you're having 2 days, you're like, well, hey man, I did 2, so 9, well, cool, I can be done in 5 days. No, 1 practice. 1 practice, or a day counts as only 1. Fundraising. I'll kind of go through this pretty quick. This is kind of a touchy area. We're in the process of making some changes. I'm hopeful that next year it can be a little bit different. What we're basically identifying is that there is any kind of affiliation outside of the school, parent committee, and you have any ties, any name affiliation with the school, its logo, or the name in itself, Rock Springs High School, it needs to be associated with us. Okay, now if as a parent committee you want to set up the Aspen Mountain Club, we have no idea what that's for. And then if you want to donate to a particular program, that's perfectly fine. But if you are affiliated, or if you have an account, or if you have a committee that is set up as the Rock Springs Tiger Cheer Club, that money needs to be in our name, needs to be taken care of so that we can effectively have it accountable. Prime example of this, a few years in the past, somebody had selling these items. We didn't know anything about it. Then all of a sudden they come to us and they said, hey, where's our item? Well, what are you talking about? Well, yeah, the Rock Springs Tiger, and I'm using this as an example, football club is using, they're selling these things. We had no clue. So we need to know about that, okay? And it's very, very important that you understand that any non-school group requiring the collection, if it's affiliated with us, that needs to come to us. If it's outside of that, and it's not affiliated with us, then we're fine, okay? So parent committees, be very, very aware of that. Also, with regard to fundraisers, I kind of forgot this. Each program is only allowed 3 fundraisers a year. Football only gets 3, basketball only gets 3, that's it. And then eventually, like I said, we're looking at a new process with that. Conflict resolution. Obviously, we know that there are circumstances that things are going to come up. We want to make sure that we have an effective process to take care of this. The biggest piece that we want to be able to deal with is we want the communication to be taken care of. I know that what normally comes to my door boils down to that one thing, a miscommunication, okay? Whether it be that this didn't happen effectively, or sometimes what you may hear at home is not at all what we're seeing in practice, okay? It's kind of tough. I know students are put in awkward positions. Maybe the pressure at home, maybe the pressure that they put on themselves. But I know that they don't want to disappoint their parents. So sometimes they go and they tell their parents what you want to hear. But the reality of what's happening out there is not the same. So we want to take care of that. That's the biggest piece why we want to make sure that the athlete and the coach communicate first. Please, student athletes, if you have a question, if you have a concern, go talk to your coaches, okay? I know they're there for you. You just got to let them know that too. Go up and say, hey coach, I'd like to know what I can do to get better. Great, have that communication. If there is still a concern, then obviously the athlete coach and myself can be involved, we can communicate. Then it can go to the athlete, the administrator, and the parent. And then if we need to, we can go with the parent, coach, and the administrator. I want to make sure and clarify, this process is largely detailed on circumstances when it comes down to playing time and philosophy. We don't have a discussion about that. Okay, we could be there all day. And it is the coach's prerogative to be able to do that with regard to playing time. If it is of a concern regarding safety, my door is wide open. Please come and see me. And we want to make sure that we take care of those things. We want your student to be safe. Okay? In regard to this, I have a video. Some of you may have seen this. I just feel that it's a very, very poignant video that kind of discusses this concern a lot of times about playing time and coaching philosophy. So we're going to watch about 3 minutes of it, and then we'll go ahead and we'll go to the next one.
What we're talking about here is probably one of the most loaded issues in youth sports, the playing time issue. And fair or unfair, it's a coach's prerogative to determine who plays and who gets the playing time. When we move away from rec sports, recreational sports, into competitive sports, it's the coach's prerogative. So probably the first piece of advice I have for parents is check your emotions at the door. It is incredibly evocative for parents to see their kids suffering, and there's no greater suffering in sports than when you have to sit on the bench. So it's very critical that when you're dealing with your child around this issue, and anyone else, other parents, that you keep your emotions out of it. It's sort of like when we get emotional, none of us are troubled by deep waves of thought. We say really dumb things. So we need to maintain that kind of professional adult perspective. That's absolutely key. I think the other thing that's important for parents to keep in mind is we want to encourage our children, like it or not, to play the role that the coach assigned them on the team. This is how teams win. This is how you learn to support your teammates. And if your role is a support player, you come off the bench, you might not like it, but it's absolutely critical that you learn to do that role to the best of your ability. And we want parents to support their kids, to encourage their kids to do that. The other key issue, and again it comes from a parent's perspective, having a better perspective, is you want to encourage your children to channel their disappointment and their anger and their frustration and their feelings that this isn't fair into hard work. You want them to take the adversity of not getting playing time and use it to motivate themselves. Use it to work much harder. Use it to maintain a positive attitude. And to not, it's very easy for kids to kind of succumb to the gravitational pull of disappointment and being bitter. And you don't want them to do that. You want to encourage them to channel it constructively. Well, I think if your child's older.
So that's just a little bit of information I think is really effective. You know, the ultimate process, whether it's Coach's voice, here it comes. So, in regards to that, one of the things that we really want to make sure that we do is that we're allowing our student athlete to grow. And sometimes, some of the best growth that we've ever had has been in situations where it's not the best circumstance for them. They have to be able to deal with some adversity. It's a great learning opportunity for them. It's very, very fortunate that I'm in an experience in that right now. You know, that's something, and I want you to be able to kind of work with that as much as possible. Help control your emotions a little bit, get some more communication, and then when it's a big concern, please come and communicate with us. But 9 times out of 10, it just boils down to a communication that we need to effectively work on. Okay? So with that, kind of going into the sportsmanship part of that, obviously the Wyoming High School Activity Association has a process with this. It's called Join the Ride, Respect, Integrity, Dedication, and Encouragement. And it talks about all components. As administrators, we're the standard. I don't think that there's very many people that don't get looked at more than administrators. We've got to uphold to that standard. Coaches, obviously. Okay? There's been conversation in the past as a coach, a role model. Whether you like it or not, you are. And there are a lot of people that are looking at you. And it's like I say in some of our meetings, coaches, your hat never comes off. Whether you're at the store, whether you're at the football practice field or in the basketball court, your hat never comes off. Spectators, please, you're the standard that seems to be the biggest and loudest voice. And we can hear about a coach and they can sit there and say, well, that coach was crazy, he was young, but he was caring about our kids. And sometimes that's definitely the case. But when you have a parent that has an exuberant attitude or expresses something, it's always sent a bad message. And especially from other communities. Oh man, you gotta hear about those Rock Springs people. They're crazy. We don't want that message. And then obviously our participants, you know, the ones that are participating, you're a key role as well. How you act on the court, on the football field is absolutely essential. Don't forget that. And then our officials. It plays into all of them. If we all work together, we've got a good process. Infamous yellow card, most of you know what that is. If there is a behavior that's inappropriate, it's going to be short and sweet. I'm just going to issue you a yellow card, or one of my facility coordinators will. Just read the card. That is your warning. Okay, we'll give you an opportunity because I get it. It's emotional. It's a great experience. Sometimes we can get wrapped up into it, but at times we've got to be able to control that a little bit. And this is your opportunity. If it persists, then we will ask you to leave the premises. As I discussed with you earlier about our social media, it's a huge component. We want to make sure that we control the message very, very effectively. Pause before you post. I think this really sums it up. Life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% how do you react to it. It's a really, really big piece to it. Our communication forums, we've got Facebook. Please, I know most of you have probably seen our communications also tied into our Twitter account. We also have Schoolway. How many freshman parents do we have here? Raise your hand, please. Now, how many of you have Schoolway? It's good to see most of those hands stayed up. That's a really, really effective way to get some great communication from us, especially from a safety standpoint. So please get on Schoolway. look at Rock Springs High School and accept that. The next thing that we have is our 4A conference. We have set up all of our schedules on 4aconference.org. This is a great website for you to be able to see what we have. It's pretty much etched in stone, but it is subject to change. Maybe something comes up, maybe the weather, maybe there's a facility issue. I know last year we had to make a change real quick because somebody's facility ended up having an issue and we had to make a change in the schedule. But this is where you can look. You just get on this, you go and you just click on Rock Springs High School or Rock Springs, and then bam, there it is. And it gives you a calendar. If you want to know what's going on in the spring, click on the day. There's our activities and athletics. And we've done a much better job this year of including not just our sports, but a lot of our activities. Tigertown Bass, that's coming up on the 23rd of August. This is an opportunity for our fall sports to give some great community representation. It'll be down on North Front Street, 4 to 7 p.m. Please show up. Expect your sons and daughters to be there for their particular sport. What we typically do is we give recognition to them by having them do a cheer, and then they just kind of give us a breakdown of their season, what they're expecting, how many students have come out, that kind of thing. So great opportunity. So please participate in that. And then just to kind of wrap it up, our biggest thing is multi-sports, get them involved in as many activities. It's an opportunity to extend the quality of their education. And that's what this is really about. I know that in the past couple of years, there's been a lot of conversation about financial cuts and activities, perhaps maybe taking the hit. I'm going to bat for it because I disagree completely. This is the extension towards a well-rounded person, and we want to keep that. So again, make sure that they participate. Just two slides. This right here real quick, this tells you where everybody's going to be at as we break out. Again, I want to reiterate, please make sure you sign up. Just so you know, don't get restless yet. Sign up, make sure that you do that. That gives me verification that you've been at this meeting, and then you won't have to watch this presentation on YouTube. So for those that didn't attend on YouTube, they'll have to go ahead and watch this on YouTube. Then there's a link and there's an acknowledgement quiz that they go through, and that's how I know that they are prepared to participate in our activities. So with that, go ahead and break out. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.